My dear sisters and brothers, one of the most poignant conversations I ever recall having in pastoral ministry occurred soon after I had settled into my new assignment in St. Jude's in Canarsie, having returned from my studies in Rome. And I had the good grace to meet a woman who had been hurt deeply by many people who otherwise were to be her friends, even members of her own family. Deep betrayals. And as we spoke, the topic we discussed was the need to forgive and how one could forgive. And what made it poignant was the human, honest struggle this woman had to try to do what she knew in her heart the Lord asked her to do, is to forgive those individuals who hurt her, betrayed her so deeply. And in the midst of her tears, in a sigh of resignation, she repeated a saying you and I have heard perhaps many times in our lives. She said to me almost in a whisper, she said, "Father Frank, I will do my best to forgive, but I'm not sure I can forget." I've often thought of that because, my friends, many of us who struggle with this need, with this divine command, can spunk up the energy and grace to forgive to a point. To forgive, may I put it, with strings. In part because there is this human reaction to try to protect oneself against further hurt and further betrayal. And yet the great challenge that's being presented to us today is that true Christian forgiveness strives to have no strings attached. Peter, I'm sure, was proud of himself when he asked the Lord whether he should forgive 7 times. For in the tradition of his time, 7 times was considered to be wildly generous. And Jesus increases it exponentially because he is reminding Peter and you and I that this call to forgive is to be wildly generous, to know no limits or bounds. For we are, as the children, to follow the example of our Father in heaven, who does that for you and me and all of us, who ironically does remember every sin, and yet gives us a chance to rebuild our lives without strings attached, generously, wildly, one could even say recklessly loving us. Perhaps what could make the challenge easier is to recall what forgiveness is. For we oftentimes think it's an emotional response. It is not. Christian forgiveness is an act of the will. It's a choice you make to give someone a new beginning, a new chance, a new start. It does not condone what happened. It doesn't excuse the hurt that was done, nor the sin committed. But it is a free act in love given to another to wipe the slate clean so that they may, turning to God, seeking his forgiveness and his grace, start anew. You see, the wicked steward was very ready to receive it for himself and not to give it to another. We have all received it for ourselves. For God is always ready to forgive us 700 times, 77 times. So who are we not to give it to our neighbors and friends, to those who have hurt us? Many times when you and I have forgiven, it has made us feel good, perhaps in part because of the relief of not carrying the burden. But the mystery here, my friends, is no matter what it makes us feel, the choice is ours to make. And so, as we go through this coming week, I am sure that there are people in your life, as perhaps there are people in mine, where we have forgiven, but not forgotten. We have forgiven, and have held one or two strings just in case. And the Lord asks us to forgive from the heart. For if the Father is willing to forgive us from his divine heart, should we not do the same for our neighbor?